Neptune conjunction in Pisces happens. So, and Pisces, while it's spiritual and dreamy and ethereal, it can also be what's kind of holy, with spirit, as it's all around us and in the earth. So, yeah, so, going along with that as well. And, in 2016, when Jupiter was in Virgo, the North Node was in Virgo, not only was that going on, but in that year, during the time when, if you were at my Amenten, we explored plants and we got into all things about plants. During that frame of time, we were in a Mars retrograde season. It was retrograde in Scorpio and Sagittarius. So February 17th, it entered Shadow. April 17th, it went retrograde in Sagittarius. Around sort of May 21st, it re-entered Scorpio, went direct June 28th, the last week of June, and continued on to August until the left shadow moved on. That was going on to, for those who were here at my Amenten at that time, remember what happened. Or for those who were there, who left, and they're coming back to my Amenten because there are some returning people this particular year. And I'm sure you remember that, but this cucumber seed, what that is. So I thought that I might just show you that. Alright, so now that's that. So what I'm going to have is I'm going to be having people, you know who you are, choose 3 people. I'm going to have 3 people go over to the kitchen table. We're going to do the doubles testing. The rest of you need to get going on your narrative. You can either write it out and do everything in the same format here, which I explained earlier, and then write it out on paper, or if you prefer to write it out on a computer, a Google document, a Word document, then you can do that too. But just remember this format here, and if you're writing, then write neatly and watch so that the margins are even and indent your paragraphs when you're writing. Okay, so this is the only things. Okay, so hope that's clear. All of you can get to work. I'm going to be having those 3 people come with me in the kitchen right over there. So choose who you are. I want 3 people over there in about a minute. Not only that, but if you're coming and if you're doing this, you need to have a pencil and you need to have some form of paper. Okay, so it can be just straight white paper. It can be lined paper. If you have lined paper, I would use that because you're going to be writing. But if you don't have it, then use the white paper. But if you do have lined paper, please just take that out and use that. Okay, so bring paper, bring a pencil, or if you don't have paper, I will go and I will supply you with paper. But you will be writing this out. This is maybe another aspect of the devil's testing, is writing it out, on paper form, which I have to admit I have not done in quite a while, and I typically would go to the computer if I had a choice. But let's try this, okay? So I want 3 people in 1 minute. I want you over there sitting over at that table. I'm going to be sitting at the chair nearest to, at the end of the table over there nearest to the couch. So you can choose your chair, choose who you are, go over there, and we'll start in about a minute. Alright. So I'm going to have the door open for both groups over there and I'll occasionally go in and check on people to see how they're doing throughout this whole process, so just be aware of that. Okay, let me, I'm facing moral dilemma, and I'm just gonna take that. Okay, so you can sit over here. I've sort of made some space for people. I hope that this is enough space. I have a piece of paper. Do all of you have paper? Sheet of paper? I'm gonna move this over here. There's only so much space on this. So, yeah, this is a little bit inconvenient. So hopefully you can find enough space because these two, right. So I hope that that's enough space. Let me see. Oh yeah, that's enough space. Okay. So, hopefully you have paper. Do you all three have paper with you? Okay, great. I'm just using this piece of paper. So, today what you're going to be doing is you're going to be designing your own planet, basically. So you're going to be having okay, hold on for a moment. Okay, I'm going to shut this door here because I don't want you to overhear what we're going to be talking about. So I'm going to shut the door. I will occasionally open it, and I will occasionally go in and check on all of you, see how you're doing throughout this. Okay, so I just want you to know that I will have the door shut. And then, oh, totally forgot to announce that. Okay, so, yeah, of course. Anybody up there, the same rules are going to apply. So, actually, when I call you, I'm going to give you some time. You need to be here. Okay, so if any of you are up there, watching from up there, watching from the screen, I need you to come here if I call your name. So that may mean walking out from the event and coming in here, taking your foot off, doing all that stuff, and coming here to do doubles testing. So all of you are working in that room doing the same thing I've assigned to my Amenten, and everybody that's doing the writing the narrative, story, what I talked about, except for the people that are doing the doubles testing at that time. If I would not assign your name, if I assign, okay, let's say I assign your name for doubles testing. You do the test, which is going to be different than what everybody else is doing here. When you're done getting home, you will then get working on your story, on your narrative, whatever it may be. It can be a made-up story, it can be a real story, but it has to be a story with, dialogue, with stuff going on, with sensory details, all those kind of things. Sort of regurgitating that information to you today. Okay. But that's after you're done with demos testing, you will either begin your narrative if you were the first group to go the first people to be called for demos testing, or let's say you started writing your narrative because I didn't call you yet, then I call you for demos testing. You do that, you come back and you continue working on your narrative. It doesn't have to be a personal narrative, just a narrative, a story. Okay? A fictional or real story. Okay, but it has to be a story, it can't be just dry information. Okay? Now, that's what I'm gonna say. For people up there, the same rules apply. Okay, so you will have to physically come here and be here for a double. If I call somebody up there, then you will have to come get, leave and come here physically and be here for that. So I hope I make myself clear. Now, continue working on your stuff. That's just all I want to say. I will be coming back here in a second. Let me shut the door. Okay. So, as I was saying, now, while you're working on this, I am going to be downstairs doing stuff too, so I'm going to sort of bring that into the picture. So what you're going to be doing is, so remember how all the planets in astrology have their own kind of function to them. So, for example, the sun travels throughout the whole zodiac in a year. So it goes around the whole circle in, 1 year time, spending about 30 days in every sign. And it doesn't go retrograde. The moon, we're not talking about the rising sign here, even though that changes every hour or so. That sign changes sign. Although we don't look at that for when we're giving forecasts astrologically, because it goes too quick and it just moves through a sign too quick. We don't look at that. So the moon, spends about 2 to 3 days in a sign, does not go retrograde. So both the sun and moon do not go retrograde. Mercury. So Mercury spends 21 days in a given sign. So let's say that Mercury enters Capricorn on January 1st. It would then leave Capricorn and enter Aquarius on January 23rd. Then 21 days later, February 14th, it would enter Pisces, let's just say. And then on, March 8th, because February is a weird month, it only has 28 days in it, so we're taking 10 days from February 14th is February 24th, but then we're counting 10 more days. So February 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, March 1st, March 2nd. So you're sort of, starting at March 24th, March 25th is one day, February 25th is one day, February 26th another, February 27th, February 28th, that's 4 days already, 5, 6, 7, that would be March 3rd, is the 7th day, 8, 9, 10, the 10th day would be March 6th, that would be, or 20, the 20th day of that cycle would be March 6th. Add another day, which makes 21 days, that would be March 7th. Then Mercury would change signs and enter Aries, where it would go retrograde. Okay, so I hope you're following me what I'm saying here. So, let's just say, because let's just imagine here that Mercury is going to go retrograde in Aries. So, it's going to enter Aries March 8th. Let's just say it spends about 3 days in the sign, just normally. Then March 11th it enters Shadow. And then 15 days later, so 10 days later from March 11th is the 21st, then 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, let's just say March 25th, it goes retrograde. It's going to spend 23 days retrograde. So 10 days from March 26th is April 5th, 10 more days is the 15th, and then 3 days from that is the 18th. It goes direct on the, let's just say the 19th. And then it's going to continue on from there. For about 15 more days, it's still in shadow. So 10 days from March 19th is the 29th. And then if we add 5 more days, April 30th, May 1st, May 2nd, May 3rd, May 4th, it leaves shadow. And then May 5th, May 6th, May 7th, it's in that sign. And then it enters Taurus on May 8th. And that just cycle whole continues. But, you know, that may be confusing. Point is, there's a couple months where it isn't retrograde. It's just kind of free and clear period. But it retrogrades in 3 signs of one element in a year. And it spends about usually 21 days at a sign, except for when it's during the retrograde season. It's longer, obviously. Now, Venus goes retrograde every 18 months or so in a sign. Spends about... Okay. So it spends about 24 days in a sign, usually. Now, here's the thing that you need to remember about Mercury. It cannot go, it has to be either a sign before the sign the sun's in, the sign that the sun is in, or a sign later. So during Aries season, Mercury is either in Pisces, Aries, or Taurus, for example. If it would go beyond that, if it enters a sign that would go beyond that. So let's say Mercury would enter Cancer when the sun would be in Taurus. That wouldn't be right, so Mercury would have to retrograde the sign. I don't know. That's the rule for Mercury. Venus goes retrograde every 18 months. If it moves beyond 2 signs away from the sun, so it would be Gemini season, for example, Venus would either be in Gemini, Taurus, Aries, Cancer, or Leo, and that would be fine. But if it goes beyond that limit of the sign that the sun's in, or 2 in front or 2 behind, then it would go retrograde. With Venus, it goes retrograde for about 32 days, I want to say. It's in shadow for 32 days. It spends about 42 days retrograde, 32 more days, or 30 more days, 34 more days, let's just say, it spends in shadow. And then a couple more days later after that, once it leaves shadow, then moves on to another sign. And then you can take that with Mars. So I hope that you're seeing the kind of concept that I'm talking about here. And I'm not going to go through the rest of it because, I don't want to do that. I've spent long enough chatting about that. I'm sure that you're getting a little bit bored. What you're going to do is you're going to map out a planet, and you're going to say, okay, this planet spends, a personal planet, let's just add another, let's just say you're throwing in another personal planet to the mix. What you're going to do is you're going to set up a system. This planet's going to spend this amount of days in a given sign direct, and then it goes into retrograde, and you have a rule. So either it could be a sign in front of the sun, or it can't go beyond 2 signs in front of the sun, or it can't go beyond 3 signs. I would say 5 signs in front of the sun is your limit, but you want to consider what is the limit of what signs it can be in without needing a retrograde season, without having a retrograde season. What signs can it be in, behind, or in front of the sun, or let's just say, so, that's the first thing to consider. Just like I was listing with Venus, it can't go beyond 2 signs, and Mercury can't go beyond 1 sign in front or 1 sign behind. Another thing you want to consider is how many days it spends in a sign. So, I would list an example, but I don't want to spoil that option for you. So you're coming up with the amount of days that this planet regularly spends in the sign, and then you're coming up with a retrograde season, that you have a formula in place for when it would go beyond that point. When it enters a sign that, like, let's say Mercury would enter into, I don't know, Venus would, like, let's say, I don't know, Mars is in Taurus. Mars was in Taurus July 5th through August 19th of last year. It entered Gemini on the 20th, but then if it stayed there for the regular amount of time, we have to think it spends 40 days in a sign, so 30 more days from August 20th to September 19th. Then we add 40 days, which would be September 29th. That would be Libra season. And the rule is that you cannot have, I'm just going to say this, you can't have a planet, a personal planet that you're coming up with trining the sun, except if it is in a retrograde season, just like probably last year, for example, when the sun was in Libra, Mars probably trying the sun at one point or another. Because Mars is moving slower, the sun is moving quicker, and so that's going on. So, unless it is a retrograde season of that planet is in the sign that it will be retrograding in, or it's in shadow, or it's retrograde itself, or pre or post shadow, or whatever, it cannot trine the sun. So that is the rule. You want to come up with, well, as I said, how many days it spends in the sign normally, just without any retrograde season, and then you want to come up with, now we're ready for retrograde season. This planet is going to be spending this amount of days not in shadow. After this many days, this planet's going to enter shadow. After this many days, it's going to slow down, station. Remember how planets station, sort of walking a path. So if I were to walk to that door, I'd slow down, come to a standstill, and then move backward, come to, stand still here, move forward slowly but surely, because it's not only going retrograde, standing still going retrograde, it's also slowing down too. So that's the other thing, it has to slow down in order to then change direction. So, I mean, that's what the planets do. So that's something that, you may, you may want to consider with this also. And then when I were to leave the shadow, I would be picking up speed, picking up momentum, moving on. After that point, after I leave shadow, after I leave the degree that the planet goes retrograde and in the first place. Remember that a planet stations to go direct at the same degree as it enters shadow in the first place. So remember that too. So, let's say, just an example of this, I hope that you're getting this, are you understanding? Okay. What this would mean would be, let's take Mars for example. So, Mars entered shadow on September 5th last year at 8 degrees of Gemini. It then went retrograde on October 30th, moved back from that point to January 12th. It's stationed to go direct at the same degree as it was when it entered shadow on September 3rd, when it first began its retrograde season. This month, and only 2 days from now, is going to leave shadow. And Mars is going to be at 25 degrees. It's going to move into 26 degrees on the 15th, 16th of March. So, Mars is going to be at that same place. It's going to leave shadow at the same place it was when it stationed and went retrograde way back on October. So you see where I'm coming from with this. So, you're coming up with how many days, so you're thinking, okay, this planet's going to enter this sign, it's going to spend this many days not in shadow, it's going to enter shadow this many, how many days after it enters the sign begin with? You can do more than 2 signs, because sometimes they move in and out of signs, but let's just say do a planet in one sign. Let's just say a retrograde season in one sign. Okay, so it's just retrograding and the retrograde season's taking place in that one sign. Okay? So you're coming up with how many days then is it in shadow? Then, yet, after that period of time, it stations and goes retrograde. How many days is it retrograde? Stations direct. How many days is it in shadow? That post-shadow after retrograde. Preferably make it the same amount of days. So the same amount of days as it was in pre-shadow, the same amount of days it is in post-shadow. Then when it leaves post-shadow, and it leaves the retrograde season behind, how many days then is it in that particular sign? 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, until it leaves and enters another sign. So you're composing this whole sort of planetary process and trajectory here with this. And, if you were to come up, say, the example I listed in the sunroom, how Mars would enter Scorpio at 23 degrees, let's just say, at, 8 degrees of Sag, it would go retrograde, and see how Mars would enter one sign and enter another sign in the same retrograde season. So you can come up with that too, but make sure that formula, you have a formula of the planet doing all these kind of things. And preferably make your post-shadow or pre-shadow, the number of days that the planet's in post-shadow, the number of days that the planet is in pre-shadow, I would preferably make those days even with the post-shadow and pre-shadow, so the planet spends the same amount of days in pre-shadow as it does in post-shadow. But you don't have to do that. Just come up with a formula that then, after that retrograde season, that planet will not be, let's just say, 6 signs away from the sun, or 5 signs away from the sun. That planet will be, let's just say you have a limitation on it, like I said earlier. So let's say you have a planet, and that planet usually only goes 2 signs away from the sun, except when it goes retrograde. When that retrograde season ends and that planet enters that next sign, or when that planet leaves shadow of that retrograde season, that planet is, or let's just say, with that planet leaves shadow, that planet